Welcome to week 11 for course data analysis and visualization using Microsoft Excel. In this week, we are going to cover basics of VBA. So what we did in the last session we learned about the list functions, which is also known as database functions, where we are passing basically the entire database to these functions and accordingly we can have the output with us. We learned about how we can add different kind of criteria to these list functions. After that, we covered how we can record and edit the macros, how we can assign the buttons and shortcuts for the macros, which we can create by editing the macro or recording the macro. And in this week, we are going to cover VBA basics. We will be learning about introduction to VBA first, and then we will go through the editor VBA. We will learn about how we can add code to the VBA procedure. We will learn about VBA variables. We will talk about if statements, loop, input and user messages, and then how we can handle the errors with VBA. Learning objectives for this week. By the end of this session, you will be able to understand the basics of VBA, edit the basic codes, and apply if loop conditions in the code. Diagnose errors. So let's start VBA basics. What is VBA? So full form for the VBA, or we can say the full meaning for the VBA is Visual Basics for Applications. It is a programming language for Microsoft Office programs. And why we are using VBA, we are covering here Microsoft Excel, and that with the data analysis and visualization, then why is there a requirement to talk about or to understand VBA, that is Visual Basics for Applications, to optimize time in Excel. And how we can do that? We can write the codes and functions and applications using the programming language VBA to optimize the time in Microsoft Excel for different applications. What we have in the editor, VBA editor, we basically have the project explorer with us, properties, toolbar, and we can add modules and start writing the VBA. How we can add the modules? We will learn this with the practicals also. After covering this slide, we will be opening Microsoft Excel and then we will be executing how actually we can add modules into the VBA. So this is the window for the Microsoft Visual Basic. So I'll just go back to my sheet orders. This is my normal Microsoft Excel workbook orders with me. So we have the data for customer ID, order ID, product, unit sold, and date. In the previous weeks, we have worked on this workbook only. So I'm opening that one. Now what I will be doing, I will be going to a developer tab, and in the previous session when we were doing the macros, at that time we learned how we can add this developer tab inside our Microsoft Excel menu. I'll click on the developer and then I have this first option Visual Basic with me, and you can use a shortcut key as well, that is Alt plus F11 to open the Visual Basic editor with you. So I'll click on that. So this kind of window you will be seeing for Microsoft Visual Basic for applications, that you can refer it to VB as well. Here you can see this window. This one is the properties and the first one is the project explorer. So whatever the applications or whatever the modules you are having in the VB in this programming language, that you can see in this project explorer, and in an hierarchy all your files will be listed here. Then we have the properties for that particular project. So if I can see here different modules here, I'll click on the module. If I go to some objects here, this is for the sheet one. So relevantly, the properties associated with the sheet one is visible here. So you can see some display page breaks and all other properties here. In this session, we will not be exploring much about the properties. Right now, you can see that you need to be understand that what we have here. I'll go back to the slide part. So in the sections, we have the project explorer. I'll come to this window. So this is my project explorer where you can see how many files you have in your Visual Basic platform or in the portal in that particular workbook, and all the files will be visible here only. Then second is properties. Properties are associated property of each individual file or object or a module which you can see, which is visible inside the properties window. After that, we have the toolbar. Before going to toolbar, you have different options here. If I click on file, you can save the Excel, the changes you are doing in the Excel. You can import the file, you can export the file. Printing option is also available. In the edit, we have undo, cut, copy, paste, clear, select. All this editing part is available with me. And in the view, you can see here. Now what you can see, the F7 is for the code. For the object, you can press Shift plus F7. You can browse different objects and you can have a different window as well. Watch window, locals, project explorer. So project explorer we can see in default section as well. Properties window is also visible. And in the toolbars, right now the selected part is the standard one. We can see the toolbars which is visible in this window as from the standard one. You can customize it as well. In the insert, we have different options or different methods to insert inside this VBA, that is procedure, use form, module, class module. We will be talking about the procedure in this session. Format, that this is for some kind of alignment, to make some changes in the size. You can do the spacing as well. You can align it in the different forms as well. Debugging is for the compilation part. Run, once you are done with the compilation, then you can run that macro or you can run that code as well. Tools, you can see tools, we have the macros, add-ins, window, help. So the same Microsoft Visual Basic has been used for the macros itself. And macro, whenever you are recording something with the macro, by default the backend is handling or making some kind of a code irrespective of the activity performed inside the macro. And if you want to do some kind of editing in for the macros, that you can do by making changes in the VBA code associated with that micro, that we already learned in the week 10 as well. So similarly, in this week, we are talking about how we can have our own code with the VBA and how that is helpful for different applications. So we have learned about, first of all, how we can go that. So we need to go to the developer and click on the Visual Basic. There you can see the project window. You can see the properties window as well. We have different toolbars here. To go back to the Excel, you can go back like that. You can insert a use form here as well. You can insert a module as well. You can insert a procedure as well. You can click on the save here, and then you have the option for cut, copy, paste, and you can find a particular content as well. Similarly, you can run the form as well, and different options are available here with the tools. So this is all for the writing the code inside Microsoft Visual Basic. Now let's go and see what we can do with the Microsoft Visual Basic. Now this is talking about how we can add modules and start writing the VBA code. We are mentioning here that VBA is a programming language. So how you can start writing the code? For writing the code, you need to go to the Visual Basic and click on Insert, and then you need to have a module first. So let me take a module here. This is my module 5. So once you have this module, you can write your code right here, only this white screen, and then you can execute the code by clicking on the run. So we have different modules here. If I click on this module 1, so I have a sub try. This is for the macro we tried that day in the week 10 for the try, and the code associated with that macro is mentioned in this sub. Similarly, we have another macro, that is sub macro 2. So this is the window where you are storing everything for the macros, so for the code here only. Similarly, I'll go to the module 2 as well. This we also did it. And then we have this module 3. Now let me come back to the module 5. There we are going to talk about what we can do here. We have learned how we can insert the module. Insertion is so simple, and once you are done with the insertion, then you can start writing your code here only. Adding code to the VBA procedure. So how we can add the code here? Procedures are stored in the modules. So once we have the modules with us, after that we need to go to add procedure. Procedure we can see here. Here procedure is mentioned here. So once you have the module with you, then you can start writing the code by having the procedure first. So in this procedure, what you can do, you can choose a sub or function or a property. You have three options here, three types here. When you're working with the procedures, you can have the procedure either for the sub or for the function or for the property type. And in the scope, we are talking about public or private. Public is accessible by all, and private is accessible by only few people or with the privacy check. Once you have selected the type in the scope, then you can click on OK and you can start writing the code. So once you have this add procedure, we learned it from the insert and then we can have the procedure. So you can give your name to that procedure, and after giving the name, you need to choose a particular type. You can have the sub, you can have the function, you can have the property. Similarly, for the scope, you can go for the public or for the private one. And once you are done with these three things, you have given the name, you have selected the type, you have selected the scope. After that, click on OK and you are done with adding the procedure inside your module in Microsoft Visual Basic, and you can start writing the code. So let's do the practical part. So I'll go back to the Visual Basic. I already have the module with me. So this module 3 is stored with me. We will be working with the sub for this week. I'll click on insert and then procedure. So I have the procedure with me now. Let me give this name as first. I'll be going with the type sub and the scope public, and I'll click on OK. Once I have clicked on OK, I will be getting a few line code by default in a single go, that is public sub, and that is name is first, that name I have provided, and after end sub is to check that we have ended that particular first procedure. And now I can write my code here in these lines, and once I write these lines, then I can actually execute this procedure as well. So in this way we can add code to the VBA procedure. Then we have the VBA variables with us. Variables are the objects, or you can say the spaces where you are storing your content. So for example, you have a particular type of a value and you want to store it somewhere. You need to provide a name to that particular location, and that name is known as variable. So how we can have the variables? To declare the variables, we need to start it with the keyword dim. Dim is already defined in VBA language. To declare the variables in the VBA, we have the dim with us. Different programming languages uses variables inside their compiler and interpreter, and they use those syntaxes to declare the variables, and after the declaration we can assign the values to those variables. Input variable name, and then give the variable type. So first you need to start with a div. Just understand this, how we can have the variables with us. This is the basics of the programming language. So once you start or you want to do some kind of execution, you need to deal with the values as well. And how you can deal with those values, you need to have variables with yourself. So to first have the variables in the VBA, what we are doing, we are declaring the variable with the keyword dim. And then after giving dim, after writing dim, we are going to give as one name to that variable name. So in this example, they have taken a country as the variable name. And then you need to have a variable type with you. Variable type define that variable will be storing what kind of value. Here in this example, it has taken as string. So we can store a statement or a word in that country variable. Country is equal to India, and then active cell dot value. We already talked about this. We have seen this in macro as well. So the value is country here, and in this way we are finishing that code for the procedure test 1. So reiterating everything here, we have taken a sub procedure. The name is test 1, and this is scope is the public for that. This is the end of that procedure test 1 with the end sub. We are taking a variable here country, and we are starting that declaration with the keyword dim, and we are having the output, the variable output as string with us. The variable type is defined with as string, and in that country we are putting equals to India. And then what we are assigning? We are assigning that value of this variable. What is the value of this variable country? That is India. We are assigning this value to the active cell value. So whatever is the active cell, there we can execute this value. So let's understand this with writing the code. I'll go back to Microsoft Visual Basic, and I already have this first with me in this module 5. So I'll be writing here dim, and before that, let me come to another sheet so where I can see the all the outputs with me. So we are working in the sheet 1 now. The sheet 1 is here, and I will be writing a variable dim, and let me give a name country itself, country, and the type we are giving as. Now you can see that whenever you are writing something like that, all the keywords are converted into a blue color text, and you can have the suggestions as well. Let me take string here. I'll be writing a string as the variable type. I can put a enter as well. After that, what I'll be doing, let me assign a value country equals to, let me give a country here USA. And then what I am using, I'm using this active cell 1. I'll provide a value active cell. So we need to make sure about the case sensitiveness of the VBA. So here what we are using, you can see here A is into capitals and C is also into capital. So I'll be writing here active cell dot, and then you can have these suggestions as well. Value, and value is equal to what we are giving that value. We are giving country. We are providing the value as a country. So this is about my function. Let me save that as well. Once you have written this, I will be selecting this whole code and clicking on this run. So I have clicked on this run. Let me go back to the Microsoft Excel. I'll go with this. So you can see here in the active cell, USA is written here. So this has been done by the code itself. Let me change this active cell to D2 this time, and let me run this code again. I'll go back, and you can see that in the D2 as well, you can have the value USA. So this time you are writing the code and then having that data, that particular data into the Microsoft Excel. So this is you can take it an example for the reverse engineering. We are writing a code and then having the output in the Microsoft Excel. Before that, we have executed macros in the Microsoft Excel, and then we have the code in the VBA. This time we are directly operating from the VBA only, that is from the programming language. So let me change this value to something else this time. I'll be having the value, let me take it India only. India I'm writing, and I'll run it again. So I'll see the output now. Now this D2 is India. D2 is India, and the active cell dot value. So we have changed the values here. So this is how we can declare the variables in the VBA, and then we can store the values in the VBA. I can have it with a different type as well. In this example, we have taken as a string. We can have it in the numerical forms also. So all these variables are allowed into VBA. Let's come back to VBA and let's learn about some new concepts as well. Next, we have the if statements. If statements are very interesting one when we are working in the coding environment. So if statements having elements as if. So if is a condition. For the if, we are providing a condition. Now this condition can be true or false. If this condition is true, then output should be like this. If this condition is false, then output should be like this else part. So in this way, if is working, you can have the nested if as well. You can provide end if for having the end of the if statement. Now we have another example as well. Before going to that, you need to understand the structure of the if statement. In the if, we have the condition. If that condition is true, then we will go to the then part, that is with the output with the then, and else we have the output for the else part. Now let's understand the working of this if statement. This is the function here given. The same test one has been extended here as with a dim you are declaring a variable country and giving as a variable type string. In the country you are providing USA. Now you have a if here. You can see with the blue color all the keywords here. If the country is equal to India, then active cell dot value is namaste, else active dot cell value is hello. So the condition you're talking about here, condition is country is equal to India. So if this is true, in that case, the statement written after the then will be executed. If this condition is false, in that case, the statement returned with the else will be executed. So the else we have active cell dot value hello, and this is showing the end of the if statement. And after that we have the end of the procedure, that is test one. You need to make sure about the hierarchy. So we have started if inside the procedure, that is why we are making the end for the if statement first, and then we are making end for the procedure test one. So let's add this if here in the same function, that is first. So let me have here, after having the India, let me give here if, and after writing if, the country's condition is, let me give a condition country equals to, let me make it here India only, and then I'm writing here then is active cell dot value, let me have here namaste, and then I have the else part. In the else part, now you can see here I can copy paste as well. So I'll paste here the value. So I'll be writing hello in the case of else part. Then I will be giving here end if, and the end sub is already written here. Let me run the statement here. Now let me go back to my Excel part. Now namaste is here in the active cell. Why namaste has been come as output? Because the condition is true, the country is India only, that is why it is going to the if condition. So we have the two statements here, active cell value for the namaste and the hello, but we are seeing that it is executing only single statement. Why it is executing a single statement? Because we have the country here India and this condition is true. So these two statements are dependent on the condition. If this condition is true, then the statement with the namaste will be executed. If the condition is false, then the statement with the hello will be executed. So let me change this value to USA and let's see what is the output then. I'll be saving it and Control A, execute that. Let me go back to the Microsoft Excel part. Now you can see here, hello here is written. Why this so? Because the condition given with the if is this time false and we have printed here hello. Let me change this to something else here. A new condition I'll take. Instead of this country, let me take here another variable here. Let me take here a numerical value this time. Let me take here num1. In the num1, I will be writing here a number. I'm giving here as, and now you can see here number, or let me take here integer only. So I'll be taking here integer for the num1. In this num1, I'm taking a value as 100. This time we are executing variable as well. We are experimenting with the if condition with a numerical value, and we have taken that variable name as num1 and given the value 100 for that integer. Here instead of country, I will be writing here num1. So if num1 is equal to 100, in that case, we will be writing here 100. Let me take it into the sentences. And in the case of the else, I will be writing here not 100. This is my condition here. Let me save this selection for the entire procedure and then click on this running statement. Which procedure or which macro you want to execute, the name is the first here. So I will be selecting here. Let me check it once again. I'll be selecting here all projects and let me look it for the value here. The value is given as first. Let me execute it one more time. So the output should be here. So 100 is printed here. How come 100? It means it is going back to, it is executing the statement for the first part, that is first condition. If num1 is equal to 100, then active cell dot value is 100. Otherwise, in the else condition, it is not 100. So let me change this value to 120 this time. And let's execute this. Go back, and this time it's a not 100. So we have experimented with the two different values. We have learnt about the string type as well, string variable type as well, integer type as well. And there we have worked on the if statement. In the if, we provide the condition first. If that condition is true, in that case, we execute the output part of the then statement. If that condition is false, in that case, we execute the output statement given in the else part. But we need to make sure about to provide the end statement for the if statement. In this way, we are working with the if. Till now, we have covered about how we can declare the variables in VBA. We need to start with the keyword dim. Then we need to provide the variable name and the variable type with the as keyword. Then we can use the variables here. In the if statement, we have the element here as if. There we can give the condition. And then we have the output, else we have the output, and then we need to provide the end if. We have learned it with the string value as well. We have learned it with the numerical value as well. Then we have the loops with us. Loops is basically you are executing a statement multiple times. How we can do that? You can do it with a loop statement. So type of loop. Loop is basically are used with the while statement. And why we need to use the loops? To repeat the same process one more time. How? Start with the loop type, see the range, and then end it with the loop. So we have another example now. Now you can see in this screenshot, we are talking about the do while loop here. So let's look here value. We have taken a procedure here test2 and we are declaring an integer value, a variable here I as an integer. Just giving this initialization value to this I equals to 1. Then we have the loop. The keyword we are using here do while. Do while is the keyword for the loop here. And then we are giving here condition. As we have given in the if statement, we are giving another condition in the do while. And then we are checking it. If the value is greater than 100 for the active cell, then active cell dot interior color. So we are basically changing the colors and we are using a particular color RGB, and then we are ending the statement if, and after that we are incrementing a value. Again I is equal to I plus 1 and ending the loop with loop statement. End with the loop you can see here, and similarly you can end the procedure as well. So basically with this example, what we are trying to do, every time we are going to check the value. If that value is the greater than 100, in that case, we are changing the interior color. Otherwise, we are not making any changes to the color. So you can see in this output, all the statements or all the words, all the values which are greater than 100 are marked as or colored as green. Otherwise, all other values you can see here 70, you can see here 51, 91, 95, all these values are of no color, but other values are, because that values are greater than 100, are marked here green. How we have done that? We are checking all the values here, and how many times we are checking those values? We are checking it for the 15 times. If I increase this to 20, then we are going to cross check the value for the 20 values here. So you can see here we are checking for 15 values here. So for all the active cell, for the 15 times we are checking these values. If these values are marked as green or are having a value greater than 100, then we are marking it as a greater than 100 value.